We're going to talk about logic in the media age. Specifically, what is a logical argument and how can we identify when they're false, or how can we identify a fallacy? Let's go ahead and start with some vocabulary. Logic is the study of methods and principles of reasoning. So, critical thinking, how can we study and analyze critical thinking? An argument uses a set of facts or assumptions called the premises to come up with a summary called a conclusion. A proposition or statement is a complete sentence that makes some kind of a claim that can be either true or false. Today is Wednesday would be an example of a statement or proposition. Fallacy. Fallacy is a deceptive argument, one in which the conclusion is not well supported by the premises. We're going to be looking at several different types of fallacies in this section. There are many, many different types of fallacies. They're used in politics, they're used in advertising, they're used in personal communication. We're going to look at many of them, but not all. This first example is an example of a fallacy in advertising. This one is appeal to emotion. It happens a lot in advertisements. This Coca-Cola ad is really simple. It says happiness, period, Coca-Cola. What they're claiming is that Coca-Cola is associated with happiness, therefore you should buy Coca-Cola. So we call this appeal to emotion. They haven't convinced us about anything, right? Other than it should make us happy. Another common fallacy in advertising is the limited choice fallacy. This one is also used quite a bit in politics. This particular example says Starbucks or nothing because compromise leaves a really bad aftertaste. It's not just coffee, it's Starbucks. You can see why this one's also called the black and white fallacy. You either choose Starbucks or you don't choose anything at all. So in this one, it says P is false, therefore only Q can be true. The diagram isn't super helpful in this one, but what it's saying is that everything else is not good, therefore Starbucks is good. Here's a great example called the personal attack fallacy, also ad hominem. It's used a lot in politics, also just a lot in our own personal communication with others. So in this cartoon, this person's trying to sell a bar of soap, but she says, because you smell bad, I do not trust this soap you are trying to sell. Well, him smelling bad has nothing to do with the soap. Probably not a great idea to try and sell soap smelling bad, but she's making a personal attack to say, I'm not going to buy the soap. The soap must not be good. So I have a problem with the person or the group, which actually has nothing to do with the item itself. So personal attack, used so much. Just calling somebody an idiot, you can't be right. That would be an example of an ad hominem or personal attack fallacy. Here's another one big in advertising, the appeal to popularity. This one's also called the appeal to majority or the bandwagon fallacy. Everybody's doing it, so you should too. So in this example, Australia, you've made the switch to Oral-B, so it must be good. So in the diagram, many people believe it's true, therefore it must be true. Great way to sell toothpaste, apparently. This one's the false cause fallacy. So this is assuming that one thing causes another. The common phrase that's used is correlation does not equal causation. We might find a relationship between two different outcomes. It doesn't mean one caused the other. In this cartoon, she finds a study that says Colorado has the lowest obesity level of any state. You know what this means? And he says, no, what? Forget dieting, we're moving to Colorado. Well, it is true that Colorado maybe has the lowest obesity level of any state, but it doesn't mean that being in Colorado causes lower weight or causes weight loss. So A and B may be linked, but it doesn't mean that one caused the other. Okay, false cause fallacy. The hasty generalization fallacy, it's actually really similar. Sometimes it's hard to distinguish these two. It's really similar to the to the false cause fallacy. But let's take a look at this one. This one says dinosaurs didn't read, now they're extinct. Coincidence? Question mark. So as we break this guy down, the premises are that dinosaurs don't read, fact. Now they're extinct, fact. Coincidence, if we kind of read between the lines there, it says, oh, maybe we shouldn't read either, right? They're generalizing that from dinosaurs to all animals that walk the earth. So it's just a funny one, but they're generalizing. So they're taking the really specific example of dinosaurs, and these are not linked, by the way. They're taking this really specific examples of dinosaurs and generalizing it to all animals that walk the earth, specifically to humans. Okay, so A and B are linked maybe one or a few times. That means A causes B or vice versa. Okay, so hasty generalization. Diversion. This is the red herring. Our president, Trump, likes to use this one a lot. So let's read his tweet here. I don't know Putin, have no deals in Russia, and the haters are going crazy. Yet Obama can make a deal with Iran, number one in terror. Yet Obama, that little statement right there, yet Obama can make a deal with Iran, number one in terror. That's the red herring. It has nothing to do with Putin or deals in Russia, but it's being thrown in there as a red herring. So this one is an example of a red herring fallacy, also called the diversion fallacy. Another good term for this one is called the smoke screen. Okay, so how can you accuse me when this person has done something worse? So the diagram says P is related to Q, and I have an argument concerning Q. It could be concerning W, right? I just have a different argument, therefore P is true. So throwing in something to divert the original argument. Circular reasoning. I love this Pearls Before Swine cartoon. It's a great example of circular reasoning, also called begging the question. P is true, and I'm just going to keep restating it until I've convinced you. They might restate it in a slightly different way, or it might be restated exactly the same as it was stated originally. Okay, here's the cartoon. What do you think happens to you when you die? Rat says, Google it. But guys, Google isn't some all-powerful, all-knowing God. There are certain things that not even Google can help you with. Pig says, which things are those? Rat says, Google it. Okay, just restating that original argument. Google it. I give up all praise to the Google. Okay, so circular reasoning, just going around and around there. Straw man fallacy. In the straw man fallacy, the original argument gets distorted. This happens a lot with personal conflicts. So if you're having an argument with somebody, listen for the straw man fallacy. A lot of times somebody will take what you're saying and then distort it and start arguing that distortion instead. In this example, the dog says, I've read this book, but I didn't see any racism in it. And then cat, listen for the distortion, says, so you're saying that everybody who does see racism is wrong. That's not at all what dog said, but it's similar, right? The cat's distorted it. Continuing, the cat says, you think that you know more about racism than a survivor. If you continue to silence survivors and keep erasing their expertise, I'm done talking to you. Okay, the straw man fallacy. So the cat distorted dog's original argument and then argued that instead. Appeal to ignorance. There's no proof of something, so it must be true. You can't prove I'm not real, so I must be real. So in the absence of proof, we base our conclusion on the absence of proof. So appeal to ignorance. Let's break down some arguments. Okay, so this cartoon. Can you tell which fallacy is being applied here? The red bird, your argument is not valid. The blue bird says, my dad can beat up your dad. And then the red bird is like, what just happened? This is a red herring, right? My dad can beat up your dad has nothing to do with the original argument. It's a red herring. And it works, right? Because the red bird is thrown off. Building blocks of an argument. So let's take a second look at these building blocks. The logical argument consists of at least one premise. The premise are the facts and assumptions that are used to support the conclusion, so the summary at the end. Here's an example of an argument. Decades of research has found no evidence of life on other planets, so there is no life outside of Earth. As we break this down, the first part of the sentence is the premise. The second part of the sentence is the conclusion, right? So there's no life outside of Earth. Okay, so there's our premise, no evidence of life on other planets. That's the fact or assumption that we're basing the conclusion on. Conclusion, therefore, there's no life outside of Earth. It may or may not be true, right? I know that they say maybe microorganisms, I don't know where they are with that. But for this particular logical argument, you can't base a conclusion off of lack of evidence. This is invalid, and the fallacy is appeal to ignorance. So lack of proof, we're appealing to ignorance. This particular argument comes in the form of a meme. You had a salad at McDonald's, so you must be healthy. Okay, premise, you had a salad at McDonald's. Conclusion, you must be healthy. Maybe and maybe not. Maybe you just felt like a salad and you're actually not healthy at all, and you put a whole bunch of ranch dressing on your salad and then had a McFlurry afterwards or something, right? So maybe not. So this one is invalid, and it's a hasty conclusion, right? There's lots of different things that we can conclude from having a salad at McDonald's, but saying you must be healthy is a leap, a hasty conclusion. State the premise and conclusion. So this is a tweet from Trump. Wow, sleepy eyes at Chuck Todd is at it again. It must be so. He is so totally biased. The things I am saying are correct, far better vision than the others. So as we break this one down, the premise consists of two assumptions here. The things I'm saying are correct, and Chuck Todd is totally biased. Conclusion, I have a far better vision than the others. So the first premise is kind of related to the conclusion, but the second premise about Chuck Todd is not. That is a personal attack. So we can call this one a personal attack or ad hominem. So if you were thinking this one is a red herring, you could also say this is a red herring. I think the better answer is personal attack or ad hominem, but red herring would work too because it's not really related, right? Throwing something in that's not related. Personal attack though. Let's break down the straw man argument. So I found this online, a straw man fallacy how-to guide. I thought this was a great way of kind of summing up the straw man argument and the straw man fallacy. So first you start by ignoring the real argument. Then you create a pretend argument. And then you defeat or defend that pretend argument. Claim victory over the real argument, and then you do a victory dance. So remember, the straw man argument distorts the original argument. That's step 2, create a pretend argument. Okay, here comes an example from a political cartoon. Obama, stop editing my remarks to make it look like I hate business. And the remarks were edited, and now it just says I hate business, which is true, right? That's what he said. However, it was taken out of context. So a lot of times when you hear somebody say, wait, you took my words out of context, it's probably a straw man argument. Let's break this guy down. Premise, stop editing my remarks to make it look like I hate business. There's another premise here, and that's the distorted argument. You said, I hate business, which is true, right? But out of context. Conclusion, you hate business. This is an example, invalid, of the straw man fallacy. So it's a straw man fallacy because the original argument was distorted, taken out of context here. Okay, here's another one. Let's state the premise and conclusion for this one. Larry just noticed that ever since women have been allowed to vote, the amount of terrorist attacks have increased. You can't deny the facts, women. Okay, so one came before the other. Women were allowed to vote. So back on our historical timeline. And after that, the amount of terrorist attacks started to increase. I don't doubt that. The question really is, are these two linked? Does one cause the other? So as I put this one together, premise, ever since women have been allowed to vote, terrorist attacks have increased. That's the premise. Conclusion, women voting leads to increased terrorist attacks. So we're concluding that one causes the other. This is invalid. It's the false cause fallacy. Women voting does not lead to increased terrorist attacks, even though one happened before the other. Okay, let's see. This one is about Chinese restaurants. There are approximately 40,000 Chinese restaurants in America compared to 14,000 McDonald's restaurants. Therefore, Chinese food is better than McDonald's. Our premise here, there are 40,000 Chinese and 14,000 McDonald's restaurants. Conclusion, Chinese food is better than McDonald's. Here, we're really saying Chinese food is better because 40,000 is bigger than 14,000. We're appealing to the majority. More Chinese restaurants exist than McDonald's restaurants. So they're trying to appeal to majority. Also, popularity here. So appeal to majority fallacy. Okay, so we've gone through several. There are lots more. You don't need to know all of the ones that exist, but for those of you who are going into a field like advertising, psychology, sociology, philosophy, you might learn many, many more of these fallacies. But you're ready to work through some practice problems.